It's the month of Kislev, which is the month where Chanukah always happens. And we know Chanukah is the holiday of miracles. Not the only one, but Chanukah, and in fact, we'll go back to Chanukah at the end, but in fact there were two major miracles. One was the miracle of the war, the fighting, Rabim biyad miyatim, that the minority beat the majority, the small group of Maccabees beat out the whole Syrian Greek army. And then we know we have the famous miracle of the oil, which we light every night. We add another candle. So there's different miracles we could discuss when it comes to Chanukah. But let's go back a step and discuss miracles in general, and then we'll come back to Chanukah. So what is a miracle? When we talk about miracle, we talk about nature. What's the difference between something that we call miraculous and something we call derech hateva, nature? So there's a famous Ramban, Nachmanides, who points out, I'll tell you what he points out in a minute, but I'll just give you an example. Let's say you're an editor of a paper and you're deciding what should the headline be. And you have a choice of two events. You know what? I heard about there was a baby that was born, a healthy baby was born yesterday. That's one choice. Or someone resurrected the dead. Which one do you think would be a better headline? Probably resurrecting the dead. Yet our rabbis tell us it's a greater miracle, a baby being born, because at least a baby comes out of nowhere, a putrid drop, and a whole live being comes about. Well, at least resurrecting the dead, not that it's easy, but at least the body's there. You just got to get the body back working. Yet, to us, obviously, we view, we meaning not us per se, but the people, rightfully, they view resurrecting the dead as a much greater miracle. And the reason is obvious, because they rarely see that. And the babies are born now, not that many, even though in halacha we do consider childbirth a danger, even though it's not the same danger it was 50, 100, 200 years ago. That was a real danger. I don't know what the odds were. But today, even though it's not really a danger, but we view it as one in halacha, a woman who gives birth, we treat her as a choleb because we don't take things for granted. We don't, for the child or the mother. So that's what the Ramban says. The same concept, he says, that when the Jews entered the land of Israel, Joshua said to them, you know what? You gotta start working for a living. No more divine providence, but now that God's not going to be giving you the food from heaven. You're not going to have the well from Miriam. You gotta start working for a living. Start working the land. And you know what? You're going to put a seed in the ground. There'll be a 50-foot tree that grows. You're going to have corn. You're going to have wheat crops growing out of the ground. He said, what? You're talking about if you put a seed in the ground, food's going to grow from the ground? I don't believe it. Wow, what a miracle. But food from heaven, of course food comes from heaven. You're telling me it comes from the ground. I'd like to see this miracle. So obviously we're the opposite. We're used to food from the ground, and today people don't even know it comes from the ground. They think it comes from Fortino's or Metro. They think the meat just comes in plastic. They don't realize it actually comes from an animal. The vegetables come from the ground. But the point being is, the Ramban's making is, if you brought up thinking it's normal that food from heaven, so that's not going to get you going. But you hear something new about food coming out of the ground, that's a miracle. So we see that the difference isn't from God's angle. God could do either one the same way. But from a human perspective, something that happens all the time we call nature. Something that happens once in a while we call miraculous. In fact, there's a famous story with the Beis Halevi, one of the great from the Soloveitchik dynasty. He says there was this miser, very wealthy miser, who didn't like to give any money to charity, but he liked miracles. So the Beis Halevi went over to him and said, how about if I do a miracle, would you give money to charity? He said, okay, if you do a miracle, I'll give money to charity. So he's there with his little son, Chaim, and he says, okay, give me whatever, let's make him up. Give me $4,000 bills. I don't know if they exist or not, but that's what you give him. And you see, I'm going to put them on the four corners of the table. There's a bowl in the middle, and you know what? I'm going to make the $4 bills come from the ground up on the table. He said, okay, that sounds like a good miracle. If you could do that, I'm in. So he takes his $1,000 bills, and then he says, Chayimo, meaning his son, go take the dollar bills and put them on the bowl. So the guy said, that's not a miracle. He said, getting money from you, that's a miracle. So it's all about perspective, what a miracle is, what isn't. So they point out, so we ask about, we'll ask a couple of questions, we'll see apparent contradictions in the Talmud, and we'll try to reconcile. So question number one is, do we have miracles today? So of course it depends what we mean by miracles, but do we have miracles today? So on one hand, the Gemara tells us in Yuma, on Daf Chav Ches 28, that Lamatseach ala Yeles HaShachar, the Gemara tells us that Purim was the last of the miracles. The Purim story, that is the last of the miracles. And it says, just like daytime is the end of night, is Sof Kol Laila, so too Purim was the end of the miracles. The Gemara said, what about Chanukah? They give an answer, not for us now. But what do we see from this Gemara? It seems to imply we don't have miracles anymore. Another Gemara in Brachas, on Daf Chav 20, they're discussing back and forth about why don't we have miracles today? Why did the previous generation have miracles and we don't? So again, it gets into they appreciate, they gave up more, whatever the answer is, doesn't make a difference for our purposes. The point being, the Gemara is saying we don't have miracles anymore. So on one hand, we see from those two Gemaras that we don't have miracles today. On the other hand, if you open up a Shulchan Aruch, a code of Jewish law, and in fact the Mishnah Brewer, the Chafetz Chaim, who lived like 100 years ago, he writes, he says, what is the halacha, what is the law, if you pass by a place where a miracle happened to you? So there's a bracha. You say, Sha'asa li nes b'makam hazeh. You make a blessing on thanking God for the miracle He did in this place. And in fact, what kind of miracle? So the example they give is, if let's say you're in the Negev, you're in a desert where there's no water, and all of a sudden, out of the ground, water starts sprouting in the middle of Arizona or whatever. So on that type of miracle, when you go back to that place, you make a blessing. So the Chafetz Chaim lived 100 years ago, and he's talking about miracles. So what's going on here? Do we have miracles today or don't we? On one hand, in the Gemaras it seems no, but yet Halacha seems to say we do. That's one question. Q2.
But what's the definition of a miracle?
Yes, that will be part of it. Whether we said the natural versus the supernatural, but that's what we'll get into. Question number 2 is, let's assume there are miracles today. And in fact, if you're a Denver Bronco fan, if you follow football, then you definitely believe in miracles. This guy is, it's all in the news. Tim, actually I was in Detroit for Shabbos, I was speaking about miracles, so I said, when it's mid-December and the Detroit Lions are still in the playoff hunt, that is a miracle. But I'm saying this guy, he's a Denver quarterback, and he basically, he's a Christian, he wears his religion on his sleeves, so some people hate him, they love him, depending on where you're coming from. And basically, talent-wise, he can't throw a ball that well. But it's hard to explain, and maybe impossible to explain, but he's won like 6 games. The team was 1-4 before he took over, and he's won like 6 out of 7, but not only did he win, but the way he wins, like they're doing nothing the whole game, and then he'll come and do something in the last couple, and not just 1 week, did it like 5-6 weeks in a row. So either way, so let's assume we do have miracles today. Do you want a miracle to happen to you? Is it a good thing that a miracle happens to you? Because remember, be careful what you pray for, because it might happen. You learned about prayer, I don't know, I walked in, I don't know if you're talking about prayer or not, but be careful what you pray for, because you might get it. So do you want a miracle? So there's a Gemara in Tainus, interesting Gemara. The Gemara tells us, Rav Yosef, one of the rabbis, he went out, him and his son and his workers went out to work in the field. And it was either work, who knows, 7 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock, they're out there a couple of hours, it's hot, they're getting hungry, and they take their lunch break. And all of a sudden, the son realized, I forgot all the sandwiches. So the food's not here, so these workers are starving or they're hungry. They weren't going to die, but they could have went back and got them, but they said they were sitting under a fig tree, and so Rabbi Yosef's son said, you know what? Let's do a miracle. And they were unripe figs. He did a miracle, and all the figs became ripe, and they ate them all up, and they were full, and they couldn't eat anymore. So then Rabbi Yosef's father came and said, you guys are probably starving. You forgot your lunches at home. He said, are you kidding me? We couldn't even eat anymore if we tried. So he said, what are you talking about? So the Rabbi Yosef the son told Rabbi Yosef what he did. And Rabbi Yosef was steaming. In fact, the Gemara rebukes him for coming down too hard on it. He says, are you kidding me? You caused God to break the laws of nature by bringing the figs before that time. You're going to die before your time. He was very harsh on his son, and he was clearly very upset. And actually, if you get miracles, at least don't waste it on figs. Have some beef ribs, some Miami ribs. That's what I would say. But either way, so the Gemara rebukes him. But what do we see? The Gemara doesn't think it's a good thing. To do a miracle, it's going to cost you. It's no such thing as a free lunch. You want a miracle because you got the figs, now you're going to die earlier. So even if you do have miracles, maybe you don't want them. And another Gemara in Shabbos, this couple got married, they were very poor, and then nothing to do with the wife died. So the husband was stuck with a little baby who was like breastfeeding, and they didn't have any food. So a miracle happened one night. The man grew breasts. I don't know if they could do that today or not, but a man grew breasts, and he was milking the baby. And the Gemara says, Kama garua davazeh, how terrible that is. You cause God to break the laws of nature. And so again, do I want a miracle? Minak and lo zichu yosef, it's going to cost you. It's probably not worth it. It's probably not worth in the cost benefit. So we see two Gemaras saying, even if you do have miracles, I don't know, make sure you want it. On the other hand, there's another Gemara in Tainus, the next page, and they can't say they didn't know the page before, and it says this great Rabbi Hanina Mendoza. So in his house, it was Friday afternoon, getting late, always hectic before Shabbos, and the daughter came running into the father saying, I made a mistake. I put vinegar in the lights instead of oil. So Hanina says, what are you worried about? Relax. He who commands oil to burn will also command vinegar to burn. And burn it did. In fact, they say it lasted to Havdalah. They used those candles for Havdalah that Shabbos. So what's going on here? You're asking God to do miracles? So on one hand we see the first two Gemaras say how terrible it is, yet Hanina Mendoza thinks, what's the big deal? Of course, what's the difference? Oil, vinegar. So that's the second question. Do we want miracles to happen? Question 3. Assuming there are miracles and we want them, are we allowed to pray for them? Could I pray for a miracle to happen to me? So there's a Gemara in Brachas, actually I talked about this week's parasha, Leah, that when Leah realized that she was pregnant again and really she's supposed to have another son, but she felt bad for her sister Rachel, the maid servants are going to have more kids than her, more boys. So she prayed, and in utero they say that Yosef and Dinah switched. Dinah was really in Leah's womb, and in fact, that's why it's interesting. Some commentators point out we see the residue of this. What do we find Yosef doing all the time? Not all the time, but we find him worrying about his appearance, combing his hair, because he really was a girl who they switched over to. And Dinah was like a tomboy. She was out running around on the roof, which was uncommon then. So either way, so the Gemara talks about over there, are you allowed to pray? Let's say your wife's pregnant or someone's pregnant. Could you pray that it's a boy, girl, whatever you want to pray for? So the Gemara says no. After, it depends at what point. If it reached the stage where the Gemara assumed at that point 40 days, whether science agrees or disagrees, that's a separate discussion. Let's assume up until 40 days, it could go either way, so it's okay. But the 40 days, you can't pray anymore because it's a tefillah shav. It's a waste. It's a prayer in vain. What are you praying for? It already happened. Like someone's riding home from work, and they hear fire engines on the block, and they say, I want to pray. It's not my house on fire. Who are you praying for? Is your next door neighbor's house on fire? So besides the theology of praying to someone else, but it's too late. The fire is there. You could pray, hopefully the fire is not so bad, it won't spread, but don't pray, you can't pray there's no fire, the fire is there. So you can't pray on something that already happened. So the Gemara says, but Leah did, so Leah was an exception to the rule. But normally you're not allowed to pray for a miracle, that's the rule. Yet we find by Chanukah something different. We make certain additions in our davening. So we add a hanisim, we talk about in our benching and davening. What happens if you forget al hanisim and benching? So the halacha is, you wait to the end of benching. When you get to the harachaman, you'll see one about Chanukah. It says, God, Nazaro nisim neflos, that God do miracles for me. So we're saying in this haracham, we're praying God to do miracles. We just finished saying we don't pray for miracles. So which one is it? Do we pray for miracles or not? And lastly, Q4, we have a principle, ein somchen al hanes. We don't rely on miracles. That it's up for you. You can't just say, okay, God, let this happen. God helps those who help themselves. You go ahead and do it, and hope, and God will help us when He sees fit. So we can't go around relying on miracles. Why not? The Gemara says, because number one is, maybe it won't happen. And secondly, if it does happen, you're in trouble. You're wasting all your merits. Or not wasting it, but you're using up all your merits. So we know there's a story in Navi that when they were traveling with the ark, and the ark looked like it was about to fall down, this guy Uzzah tried, we see something falling, you automatically go, and he was punished for it. He says, the ark carries itself. How dare you think you're going to carry the ark or carry the luchos? He was rebuked and punished for it. So in some canal-age, you don't rely on miracles. If I see the ark falling, shouldn't I try to catch it? So which one is it? Do I rely on miracles or not? So are there miracles today or not? On one hand, we see the two Gemaras seem to say Purim was the last miracle. The later generations, the previous generations have it. Now that's on the other hand, the Shulchan Aruch says you make a bracha that if you pass by a place where a miracle happened, so clearly miracles do happen. And do we want miracles to happen? On one hand, we don't. The case with the figs, unripe figs, the man growing breast, not a good thing. Yet, Chanina Mendoza, oil and vinegar, who cares? Bring it on, God. All the miracles we want. Question 3, do we pray? We're not supposed to pray for miracles. Leah was an exception to the rule. We can't pray, let this be a boy or girl. It's decided already. On the other hand, on Chanukah, we do pray for miracles. Number 4 is, do we rely on miracles or not? So we know we say not, but yet Uzzah was punished for, in fact, let's go back to our favorite, Chanina ben Dosa, another story in the Gemara. He had a yeshiva, and being a teacher, it doesn't take much to distract the students. Imagine a bee comes in the classroom or anything, they're all over the place. So in this case, there were snakes around, and snake was coming out of the hole. And the kids say, no, we can't learn now, we're always scared of the snake. He said, okay, tell me where the snake is. So he said, it's coming out of that hole. So he takes off his shoes, he goes barefoot, he puts his foot on top of the hole, and the snake bites him, and he dies. That is, the snake dies. Not Chanina ben Dosa. And the kids come up with the song, woe to the snake who comes in contact with Chanina ben Dosa. Ain't so canal on eight. How could you rely on miracles? So, do we rely on miracles or not? So basically the commentators explain, it depends on, what level a person is holding on. In other words, let's say Moshe Rabbeinu, they said he didn't eat 40 days and 40 nights. So was that like a hunger protest? Like some people in jail, I'm not eating, or let's say you get dropped by your girlfriend and you're too depressed to eat, whatever the case may be, and you're not protesting, you just can't eat. Or you're upset, whatever no, Moshe Rabbeinu, see, nature, we don't have to worry about it, but for some people like Moshe Rabbeinu who live, they see God on a much higher level. Nature is very restricting. In other words, to us, nature is normal. That's the way we live. But the fact that it's not that he said, I'm not going to eat. He was so intensified, connected to God. He didn't even realize he wasn't. It wasn't like he was specifically not eating. It just didn't happen. Hanina ben Dosa, he lived his life with God around him all the time. There was no difference to him, vinegar, oil. To someone who lives that kind of life, there's no problem. As we said, there's no difference between nature and supernatural. It's only what our perception is. To that person, he lives with miracles. He doesn't even view it as a miracle. This is normal life for him. But someone who lives like all of us, a normal existence, that's the only way we can live, asking God or having God break the laws of nature for us, that's not a good thing. In fact, we're not far from Niagara Falls. There's a famous story with Bobo the acrobat. Bobo the acrobat, I've heard it in different names, but basically he was a famous acrobat. In fact, last week I was walking by in the hall, I saw a TV on, and someone wanted a tightrope over Niagara Falls. They didn't let him. So, but Bobo they did let apparently, or he didn't, or he asked for forgiveness instead of permission. But either way, so he says, Bobo comes down, he says, come down, I'm going to do something miraculous, great. You know, a couple hundred people show up. What are you going to do, Bobo? I'm going to tightrope over Niagara Falls. And they're all cheering him on. He's the greatest, Bobo. What a miracle. He said, you haven't seen anything yet. Come back tomorrow. Bring your friends, bring your family. I'm going to do something even greater. So he goes and he comes back. You know what I'm going to do? You see, I'm going to tightrope again, but I'm going to put a blindfold on. I'm going to do it without looking. Oh, Bobo, wow, you're the greatest. They're cheering him on, and he does it. Amazing. He says, I want you to come back tomorrow, bring more friends. I'm going to do something even more spectacular. So now thousands of people are around there. And he said, you know what I'm going to do today? Yeah, Bobo, you're the best. Everyone's screaming, hollering like a game. Yay, Bobo. Go, Bobo. And then he said, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to tightrope over Niagara Falls with a blindfold, and they see he has one of these wheelbarrows with him. He said, you know what? I'm going to push someone in the wheelbarrow while I have blindfold. Oh, wow, Bobo, you're the greatest, amazing. You're going to push someone in a wheelbarrow. So he says, yeah, any volunteers? Silence in the crowd. As the Maimonides says, no one actually believes based on miracles. If you believe based on miracles, you're a fool. Of course, at least not in our religion anyway. That God doesn't do any, of course we do, we have miracles, but it's not the focus of our emunah. We don't believe in God based on miracles. That could solidify our faith, etc. But the basis isn't based on miracles. And that's what Maimonides writes. And that's a person who lives by miracles, so there's no difference to him, vinegar, oil, you can put your foot, it's all the same. But to us who live on a regular, normal level, so all these things, we can't ask God to break, we don't pray for miracles, we don't ask God to break the laws of nature for us, all these things are for us. A Jew lives based on emunah, we have to live based on faith, and we do everything we can, and hopefully God helps us along, as well. So they point out that by Chanukah, we said Chanukah breaks the rule, because on Chanukah we say in the benching that we ask for miracles. So the question is, how can we ask for miracles? So there are a couple of different answers. How do we pray for a miracle during Chanukah time? So number one is it depends there's a qualification. You can't pray for a miracle to happen to yourself. But if you're praying for the Jewish people, you're praying for the public, that's something that's okay. In fact, we find during Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we add in our Shemona Esrei, in the beginning we make certain insertations. Let me go back. There are three categories to the Shemona Esrei. See, when we say prayer, when we say davening, we mean the whole prayer book. But when the Talmud talks about prayer, it means specifically Shemona Esrei, the Amidah. So there are three sections to the Amidah. The first three blessings are praise, the middle blessings are requests, and the last three blessings are thank you. So the first three blessings and the last three never change. The middle, we don't make requests on Shabbos and Yantiv, so those we change. So it's interesting, during the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we add in different things in the praise section. God, remember us, mi chamocha avaracha. We're basically it seems like we're making requests in the first. How could we make requests in the first section? So two answers. One answer is, what greater praise to God? If I'm making a request to you, that means I actually believe you could help me. I'm not going to go around asking some guy in the street, why don't you help me out? Why don't you do it? Because I don't think you can. The fact that we're putting our hands in God's hands, that is the greatest praise. Or, other answers, the way we're saying is, because we're asking in plural. You can't make a request for yourself in this section, but a request for the Jewish people, for the world, that's okay. That's one answer. Another answer is, it depends. You can ask for God to do a miracle through a natural means. Like, the guy doesn't have to grow breasts. Someone can knock on his door and deliver a carton of milk to him. That's okay. And some say the opposite. If you're going to do a miracle, it might as well happen breaking the laws of nature, because how is anyone going to know a miracle happened? If you want to sanctify God's name, people have to know. And then others point out, it depends. If you're doing it for a mitzvah, so then it's okay. And lastly, they point out during Chanukah time, see, when God created the world, let's say, and then so during the 6 days of creation, He implanted in the world when miracles will happen. So in other words, He said, by Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the Red Sea, that was already planned from the beginning of creation, and we knew the sea was going to split. So to Chanukah is a time for miracles. That built into the nature, these 8 days of Chanukah in Jewish history have always been times of miracles, and normally we can't ask for miracles, but that's asking God to do something He doesn't usually do. But during Chanukah time, that's okay. As we pointed out, there are two miracles on Chanukah. One is the miracle of the war. One is the miracle of the oil. Which would you say is the greater miracle? The miracle of the oil or the miracle of the war? You'd say war?
No, the oil.
Oil, okay.
Doesn't matter.
You say that there is no better.
Doesn't matter.
In a war, you always have a chance.
Because it doesn't, miracles don't matter. What you're saying is basically, this is all historical. We're not talking about everyday life. We're not talking about any relevance to ourselves. This is folklore.
What do you mean?
Well, we've asked questions, but this has been basically you telling us folklore, stories. But there's been no discussion about how any of this relates to our life.
No, but it was an improbable fact, and it happened, right?
Right, but that we didn't mean that we haven't got that far right now. But I'm saying I'm discussing Jewish sources, how they view miracles.
You're telling it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm telling you what the time. I'm not telling you I'm not reading a Jewish folklore book and telling you. I'm quoting you from the Talmud, from the Shulchan Aruch. Yes, I'm saying right. In terms of how the miracles happen and that, a person can choose to believe a miracle happened. These are, whether it's Chanukah or that, these are just different stories in the Gemara, right?
Yeah.
So.
But the purpose of telling stories is to help people learn from them, not just to hear them.
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
So therefore, so that's what we're getting to. So therefore, that's what they point out. So one of the rabbis, Pinchas ben Yair, who was one of the rabbis. So speaking of stories, story goes he was walking on water. He did the first one. So the student said to him, "Tell me the secret, Rabbi. How do you do it? Like you say abracadabra, do you do it to some type of code here?" So he says, "You want to know the secret? I'll tell you the secret. You want miracles to happen for you or to others? If you could say that since the day you were born, let's say you were 12 or 13, the time you were bar bas mitzvah, and you could say you never caused harm to another human being, then you'll be able to do the same thing I'm doing." In other words, obviously God does miracles, but ultimately what he was saying is man does the miracles. In other words, if you reach a level, you work on your midos, you work on your characteristic traits, and you become such a person that you never cause harm to someone else, So you're creating the miracle. Obviously God's behind the scenes, but you're the one who's doing it. In fact, that's what they point out by the miracle by Chanukah. We said that there was the miracle of the war and there's the miracle of the oil. So obviously the war is a more important miracle because we'd be dead. We'd be dead if not. The oil wouldn't be doing it any good if there's no one alive. So obviously, clearly the miracle of the war is the greater miracle.
It's more important, but it's still a probability, right? Because you can always win a war even if you have a small army. Whereas with the oil, it's kind of physically.
Yeah, that's very good. That's the point I'm going to make right now. So the miracle of the war. So we know, and that's the one we mentioned in davening, in Al Hanisim. Al Hanisim, in our prayers we mention, we thank God for the miracle of the war. Yet if you look in the Talmud doesn't discuss the war, it only discusses the miracle of the oil. So how come that in our prayers we discuss only about the war, but in the Talmud they only discuss the oil? So the commentators explain is because the Gemara's question was based on which miracle do we institute the holiday of Chanukah? What is the holiday of Chanukah instituted on? So the Gemara says that's the miracle of the oil. Why was the miracle of the oil picked, not the miracle of the war? Because exactly as you were saying, because the miracle of the war is it wasn't like a miracle where they took out guns and they shot the guns and the beast came out and ate up the enemy. That's not the way the war works. Same thing, all these tremendous miracles that happened with the Israelis war, but it happens in a normal way. But the fact that the few beat the many. So definitely, and there are people who say we're nothing new with God. We have a great Israeli army. We know, we study well. Yeah, that's probably true. You do have a good army. You did study well. But ultimately, you don't necessarily have to see the hand of God. You could think it's a great, army that did it. And therefore, it was the whole discussion by the Hatikva, whether putting God's name in the Hatikva. So obviously, the religious people said yes. The secular said no. Why? What does God have to do with anything? So they compromised and they used the word sor, rock. So rock in Hebrew, also refers to God, and rock can mean arm whatever you wanted. So they point out that if you look at the war itself, you could argue either way. A religious person's not going to prove to a secular, and no one's going to. You could have your own opinion about it. You could think you could think all the Israelis were a miracle, and you could think it was because I prepared, I studied, I'm a better shooter, and there could be elements of both in there. However, when it comes to the miracle of the oil, that's breaking the laws of nature. That was clearly, the act itself was miraculous. So we instituted the holiday of Chanukah based on the miracle of the oil, because we wanted to show that just like that miracle of oil was clearly, no one would argue that was a miracle that oil lasted 8 days instead of 1 day. So too all the other miracles that happened, the war and other things, that also was the hand of God. And in fact, that's what do we learn from all these miracles? Or let's say Kriyas Yamsuf is known as the prototype of all miracles. Why? We could probably go through Jewish history and show there's so many more greater in supernatural quality. We can find so many more miracles, greater. So why is the splitting of the Red Sea known as the prototype of all miracles? So
it's probable by law of nature.
No, but I'm saying it
was because there was lots of reasons, but one of the reasons why it was because it was before the entire nation. Everybody witnessed it.
Right, that's right. That didn't make it any more. The quality of making the sun stop, making the moon. So what does it say in the Chumash? It says right before we sing the Oz Yoshia Moshe that we say every day at davening, we say Vayaminu v'Hashem u'v'Moshe Avdo, and they believed in God and Moses their servant. In other words, what's the measuring stick of how great a miracle is? Because you can do miracles all the time. Who cares? You said they're worthless. If you do a miracle and I don't know what miracle, who cares what you do? You're playing some games, some card tricks. It's not going to do anything to me. go walk on water. Wow, I'll find out what the trick. Magicians don't like giving away their tricks, so we'll find out. Now we see a magician and think like, wow, whatever. We know there's something going on here. So how do you judge a miracle? By the association to the divine. In other words, why was Kriyas Yamsuf the greatest miracle? What happened? The Jews became believers. In other words, we find by Har Carmel when Eliyahu Hanavi was having basically the Jews were schizophrenics. Half the day they were worshipping idols, the other half they were worshipping God. Eliyahu had enough. He said, you can't just stand on the fence. You got to make a choice. Either all in or all out. You got to pick one of us. None of this. Okay, I'll serve both of them. So they had a contest, and they were going to have, and whoever won the contest, that's who they'd believe in. So when Eliyahu is praying to God, he seems to be redundant. He says, Aneni Hashem Aneni. Answer me, God, answer me. So it's redundant. What do you mean, answer me? But he said, was he stuttering or something like this? Answer me, God. God heard you the first time. So that's what they explain. God, Aneni, God, answer me, God, that the miracle will happen. The fire will come down from heaven and consume my sacrifice. But I know people see miracles all the time and it's meaningless. Like they're here today, gone tomorrow. Aneni Hashem, Aneni. Let them, the second of it is answer me, that they see, that they associate with the divine and they realize it's coming from you, and you get them to come back to me. As the Rabbi says, miracles for the sake of miracles, you're a fool. Miracles doesn't do anything. It's not, you can do all the miracles in the world, but if no one's going to associate it, so that's what the Kriyas Yamsuf is all about. And that's what modern, we could go back even more, but since 1948, and obviously the more you know, the more you're amazed in terms of all the miracles behind the scenes, how Israel came about, how they exist today. The Scud missiles fall over there, where they could have killed thousands of people. They just fall over here in the middle of I'm sure everyone has their own accounts of what different stories have happened in here, Israel, or whatever. And the point is, the greatness of the miracle is the association with the divine. If you realize that you view it as a miracle, and then it impacts you on your life, that's the power. The miracle is worthless. If God has a miracle, okay, good. Try. You're as good as your last at bat. God, I think you got to do better. If you do a better miracle, then maybe I'll believe, or that type of thing. So we don't believe based on miracles. Miracles don't hurt. If they happen to come along the lines. But the point is, we have to have our emunah, and the miracles have to be based on that. And that's what the commentators explain. And that's the lessons of Chanukah into our everyday life. That this is Chanukah. There are many people who say Yehuda HaMaccabee. It was the Maccabee. Are you kidding me? What did God have to do with it? The Maccabees, they beat the army. So too, many people feel they're the great Israeli army. That's the reason why. In fact, that's why that was the concern. The rabbis were concerned if we only had the miracle of the war, that all they'd be talking about is Yehuda HaMaccabee and the Israeli army. But the miracle of the oil shows that not only was the oil a miracle, but even the war, which one could, and that's everyday life basically. Is we go through our days all the time, and all the things that happen to us, whether the things we're expecting, the unexpected, all that. The trick is to see the divine and everything. Whether it's, as we said, is it miracle, nature? It's all how we perceive it. The same people can see the same thing, but one brings, wow, what a miracle. Other ones say, what's the big deal? This happens all the time. It's basically, as the Meshach Chachma points out, we say in our davening every day Ashrei 3 times a day. And the Gemara says, if you say Ashrei every day, you warrant reward in the world to come. It's a good thing. Yet the Gemara also says somewhere else, one who says Hallel every day is like a blasphemer, is a cursing God. So the problem is, Hallel comes in the book of Tehillim, Ashrei comes in the book of Tehillim. But I don't get it. You tell me, if I read from this book, I'm great and I'm terrible at the same time. So which one is it? So that's what they explain. Is when does one say Hallel? when a miracle happens. God breaks the laws of nature on all the holidays, Chanukah, Pesach, etc., and then we say Hallel. So someone only sees God when he breaks the laws of nature. You only see God in those miracles. You're as good as your last at bat. That person is a blasphemer. You basically don't appreciate anything. What is Ashrei? If you look in Ashrei, the next time you daven and you have the siddur, it's in the form of Aleph, Beis, Gimel. Someone who sees God in the everyday things. I woke up this morning. I have 2 eyes. I have 2 legs. I'm healthy. I could function, or I could go to the bathroom. You could go on and on. What the list is. If you see God in the everyday things, someone only sees God when a miracle happens. You're a blessing. You're missing the whole point of it. It's not the miracle. It's seeing God in everyday life, the things that we have in common with the animals, and realize those are the things, that we have to appreciate. The everyday things of life, that's the person who's praised. And that's how we have to view things. That everything is not just when God breaks the laws, and he'll do it once in a while. Who knows when he will, when he won't. But that's not the miracles we have to focus on. That we don't have those today. It's the everyday miracles. As the Mishnah is in Pirkei Avos, it says, who is the rich person? Izu Asher Hasameach Bechelko, one who is happy with the lot. So Asher, rich, is spelled Ayin, Shin, Yud, Resh. So the rabbis tell us Ayin stands for who's the rich person. Ayin stands for eyes, Einayim. Shin stands for Shinayim, teeth, your mouth. Yud stands for Yadayim, arms, and Resh stands for Raglayim, legs. You know who the wealthy person is? One who has eyes, a mouth, a legs, and those are the people who appreciate the little things. Those are the people who appreciate all the miracles and anything else that happen. And that's what it's all based on gratitude. Hakaras Hatov. People who don't have gratitude, many people today, they feel it's the right that God give them. They're the generation to feel they have everything coming to them. And the problem is, if you feel that way, you can get 100 things, but if you don't get the 101 thing, it's kind of like a child. The problem with the child, and that's why we don't, until bar mitzvah, we could discuss 13 or 20, but the point being, a child is an amazing thing in many ways, but a child it's total, there's no balance, it's total focus. You give him a toy, he is the happiest person in the world. 5 minutes later, you take something away, it's not appreciating, well, I have this, I have that. That's all they know is, unfortunately, it's normal for a child to be that way, but many adults are that way. It's part of being a human being is you have to have the balance and realize, appreciate what you have, what you don't have, and that's what they point out. Is Eizu Asher Sameach Bechelko. The greatest miracle is appreciating life. All the things that happen daily. We wake up in the morning, we can walk home, and all all these other things. And that's the lesson. The lesson of miracles, whether it's miraculous, natural, is to appreciate the things, the people, things that we have in life, and don't take things for granted. You take things for granted, you'll be a miserable person. No one's happy. Happiness is a serious problem that I think one has a moral obligation to be happy, because there's nothing worse than being next to someone miserable. No one wants to be around someone who makes everyone else constantly complaining. You have a moral obligation to your kids, to your spouse, to whoever, the people you work with, and to try to at least fake happy. Because the truth, if you fake to be happy, then at one point then you'll probably become happy if you go through the emotions. The point being is, no one wants to be, and therefore that's what it's all about. Taking our everyday things and turning them into miracles. That's what the lesson of miracles is all about. Any questions, comments?
So in the end, still, what's the definition of a miracle, Rabbi? Something against the laws of nature?
Yes, so basically, yeah.
Actually, something that...
Right, it depends what we mean. So, by definition, if it breaks the laws of nature...
That's
but only because... But according to the Nachmanides, there's no qualitative difference that between nature and miraculous. it's based on a human perspective. Like something that doesn't happen, something that happens once in a while, we call miraculous. So for our purpose, something that breaks the laws of nature, we call miraculous. Something, a baby born, even though it's a great miracle, we call it we call it natural. But of course, within nature is the greatest miracle, and that's the point we're learning. That it's the things that God set up in nature. That's the higher level for us. As Maimonides writes, seeing God in nature. That was kind of like the Purim thing. Seeing God be Chanukah. You had both the war and the oil, but Purim, seeing God behind the scenes. Like there's a story of this rabbi they were running away in the Holocaust, and they ended up in Russia, and he told one of his Hasidim, "Go get me the paper." So the student said, like, "Rabbi, with all due respect, you don't read Russian. Why should I get you the paper? Don't waste my time." He said, "No, you don't get it. You have to learn to read in between the lines. I don't really care what I don't care what it says in the New York Times. I don't care what you got to read in between, or whatever paper it is, National Post. You got to see the story from behind the scenes, not just what there's the facts, and then that's what it's all about. Seeing God behind the scenes, seeing God in nature for us. That's the highest nature. That's the highest level, is seeing God in our everyday life, because miracles. Okay, so good. So that's not really relevant. That's because we don't go around breaking the law. In the Jews in the Midbar, that was their normal existence. All the miracles happening. For us, we're not looking for miracles. Miracles aren't good for us. We don't want them. I mean, we don't want them. God decides He'll bring them. We're not asking for them. We want to. We live on our everyday existence. That's the healthiest thing for us today. Is an everyday normal existence, and seeing God through everything that He's given us, put us into the world.
On the Amidah, there's a prayer for health.
Rifa'enu, correct.
Healing. So if a person has a disease, and prognosis is not good, you may pray for their recovery. There's in fact even sort of encouragement to pray for that. But if they should recover from a cancer that's incurable, is that a miracle? And can you pray for that?
Excellent question. The commentators deal with that. So actually, so exactly, we know we all do a Misha Berak for Chola. So what are we actually praying for? That cancer should disappear, or so obviously that's the problematic. We don't pray for miracles. So either we could pray that the person should maybe either be in less pain. But basically, we could pray for that someone should come with the cure for cancer, or something could come up in other way. But we can't pray that we can't just pray for a miracle to happen. That's and therefore something go away. That's not the way we have. We pray He should. God should have mercy. It shouldn't be so. Different things like that. But exactly as Eddie's pointing out. We can't pray for we don't make a Misha Berach asking for miracles to happen, because that's not what we do. Maybe they'll find something, maybe it'll go slower, less pain. Things that are within a normal range. That's what we pray for. In fact, that's what some of these. That's why like someone with Alzheimer's. So what do? So you don't pray that the Alzheimer's disappear. You pray either that you find a cure or something along the more derech hateva lines. But exactly, it's inappropriate in those cases. You can't, that's not the Jewish way of praying for miracle. Obviously, of course, we'd all love for cancer to disappear tomorrow, but we don't live in the world of miraculous. We're not in the desert. We have to go with what science and the world we live in, and therefore we have to try to find a way, which I'm sure thousands of people are working on right now, and maybe we're getting closer every day. Just imagine the modern technology, all the pills, everything that's come along. Who knows when the time will come? But that's what we have to pray for. And not only pray for, but actually go ahead and continue doing this research. That's what God wants us. God wants us to be like Him. We have to imitate, just like God saves lives, we do it. In other words, there's nothing wrong with doing. That's what God wants. And we can go ahead. We're not going against God's plans. Well, if someone's sick, okay, that's God's will. That we don't believe in that. It's our job to pray that they get better, do things to take care of the person. That's what God wants from us. And 100%, we have to pray for things that, through natural ways, things will get better. It doesn't spread. It's, whatever, you have to know what the disease is and what's the normal way and how you fight it, and have the appropriate prayer. God have Rahman, or some generic thing, but not that, God, I'm praying that this cancer disappear now. We wouldn't mind it happening, but that's not something, we don't make that kind of direct prayer.
And yet we have a special part in the service. People come up to the front, like there's.
No, we're saying but there's nothing wrong with praying to someone to get better. The question is yeah, exactly. It depends what they have and what they mean. It's clearly, that's definitely a good thing, because the more people, and in fact, it's for us as well. We have to care about other people and hope they get better. But you're right. We can't just. You shouldn't think when you're going up and saying Misha Beirach that God. You're not saying God do a miracle for the person. In the Misha Beirach, you're saying let there be a refuah, and ways of how it could work. But you're right. In fact, it's a very interesting point you're making. There are those who would say, if there's no turning back, maybe you shouldn't be making a Misha Beirach. If you want to take it to the extreme, there is that view that if there's nothing to do, there's no point in making. You could try definitely do everything, like make the person comfortable, give them but maybe there's no exactly the point you're making. Maybe you shouldn't be praying. In fact, I'll even take it to a further extreme. There's an opinion brought down that if someone is in tremendous pain and dying, there's a mitzvah to pray for his death. In fact, you have to know when to pray for recovery or not. There's a Gemara in Ksubis, Rabbi, one of the great rabbis, he wrote the Mishnah. At the end of his life, he was in tremendous pain, some stomach, whatever, most painful thing in the world. But his students, of course, were praying that he should stay alive. And the maidservant, who was also a holy woman, was saying, "You kidding? Look how much pain. I want to pray that she should die." So what did she do? What do you do? How do you just? She went on top of the roof. She took a glass container and she threw it down on the floor. All the kids ran out to see what it was. When they came back, Rabbi was dead. In other words, but the point being, so that in that Gemara discusses, who do you follow? The students thought you should pray to keep him alive. Many assume like the maidservant was right. Obviously, you have to know where that point is, of course. But when a person reaches a point where they're just living a life of pain, it's not reversible, there's nothing you can do, all you're doing is keeping them alive and keeping the pain, but you can't get better. So obviously the devil is in the detail, what is that point? Then, according to some, you have a mitzvah to pray that you should die, not that you should stay. What do you Misha Beirach? What? You want me to stay alive and suffer? You're not doing, I'm not getting better. So and that's also, again, you have different sides. Is there ever a point where a person's better off dead than alive? So you have a minority view that says, by definition, life is always better than death, no matter what, and they say you're never allowed. On the other hand, you have other views on the other side saying no. Whatever is reasonable in that society, what's considered the norm is a reason. If someone says, I cut my lip, I don't want you to kill me, so it's not reasonable. But someone has, a level of cancer, suffering, obviously, so then, yes, obviously if the person wants to live, then you never, that right. He has the right to, but if, in terms of doing everything, but they do point out one caveat is, let's say if it's your wife, or you should be the one praying that your wife died. It doesn't look too good that a husband. In other words, it's okay. It's not that it's fundamentally wrong. Get someone else to pray, that. But in terms of, let's say the kids can't wait to get the inheritance. Why don't you die already? What do you do? So then you shouldn't be summoned. You shouldn't be that close because you might not have the full picture. But someone objective was there, and it's clear. Then there is that concept of praying that a person dies, because sometimes death is better than a life of pain. So,
from a practical perspective, just like if I'm in the hospital and somebody is very sick on a machine or something, by Jewish law, can you take them off the machine?
But that's
a bit different.
It's a big no, right? I'm saying.
I think there's no hope.
Right. That's
it's not a prayer. It's more of an act.
No, right. Yeah, that's different. See, that's what someone to tie it into this. Well, your case is. So number one, there's a difference between. We're always saying is we're praying. We don't. You never have a right to tell. even though you could pray for his death, I can't go ahead and shoot him. Take me out of my pain, kill me.
Can you allow the doctors, for example?
No, so there's a bit again. So I'm not going to say so it's much better. It's much easier to withhold medical treatment. Right. That's why you have to be. You have to be ro'es hanolad. You have to realize what you do. I'm not saying you can. Then I'm not saying there aren't any ways, but in terms of like it used to be that they used to have to clean the machine. So then maybe there are ways of getting the person to breathe up to a certain level. Then it's much harder. It's much harder to get to pull a plug from. It all depends. Is why is the person dying? Like, are you dying? Like the case of the Gemara was someone was dying, and there was a guy chopping wood outside.
Every time he made a shekel.
And it wasn't obviously a medical, but a metaphysical. He told him, so the luck is you're allowed to have the guy stop chopping the wood. But by chopping the wood, he's going to die. But he's not dying because he's chopping the wood. He's dying because of his sickness. But if you go ahead and pull the plug or whatever the case may be, again, that's the question. I'm making that assumption. You might know better than me. But by pulling the plug or not feeding them, so then if you die because of starvation, then it is. So that's a whole discussion in its own right. But there's a whole range, and in every case is going to be different. But clearly, oxygen, food, and that type of thing, you have to give the person the basics. But clearly, you have to be ro'es hanolad. Certain times you have to make sure you might not be doing the person a favor by doing things, and then you're going to get stuck in a situation where it's much harder to do it. You have to think about it beforehand, and I'm not necessarily obligated to do it. We don't have to do superhuman things. Whatever is considered normal, and ultimately, the ideal to know what that person would want. Now, a lot of times you don't know. Even if they left it's from 30 years ago, they barely have most people, I don't think really know what it is when they're signing it. But if you had a recent discussion, you basically know the person, and you know what they want. Again, so if it's an extreme in either way, anytime I stop bleeding, if anything ridiculous, we don't accept it. Whatever that box of reason is, we could get a bunch of doctors and come to a conclusion. This is considered reasonable. I can't live in this condition. Then there's definitely what to talk about in terms of not doing. You don't have to give them all the intervention in terms of that. It's always better not to get them on, not to put them on. I'm not saying there's never a way, but it's a much harder question because the more indirect, it's always the better.